Think about General Motors or think about Walmart or somebody, or think about any business. They have information about their cost structure, the information about their competitors. It's expected, right? But for some reason in dentistry, it's like this aha moment when all of a sudden we're providing this level of detail to a financial executive. It's really kind of mind blowing when you think about it like that. It should already be there.
If you're comfortable, you're not growing. Welcome to Dental Marketing Theory. My name is Gary Bird. I am the CEO of SMC National, and we help dental practices have predictable new patient flow. And today I'm excited because I have two guests, Doug and Glenn, and they are from DataDx. Did I get that right? DataDx. Did I get that right?
Yep.
DataDx. And let me tell the story how I met you guys. So, Doug, I was at Dykema, and I was with a couple other people that I knew, sat down at a table with you, and we started having a conversation about what you guys do for the industry. And then that kind of parlayed to us following each other on social media. And I had a question that I posted of what is the best data analytics platform out there? And people started posting in there, and someone mentioned you guys. And then my question to you was, okay, I love the dashboards. There's tons of dashboards. We got a dashboard. Everybody has a dashboard. But help me understand what the difference between you guys and like maybe a Dental Intel or a Jarvis or Practice by Numbers. What are you guys doing that really sets you apart in the industry?
Great question, and thanks for the opportunity for Glenn and I to appear with you, Gary. It was great to meet you at Dykema. That was a blast.
Yes, it was a good event.
So really the primary differentiator and the I guess the issue we wanted to solve was we wanted to bring in the accounting or bookkeeping data along with the practice management data. So by bringing in their QuickBooks, their Xero, their Sage, their Great Plains data, that revenue expense data into that dashboard, all of a sudden you had a much more powerful tool, especially for, let's say you're the CFO of a 25 practice DSO, and be able to have that information real time on expenses and revenues and other things that just isn't there when you're just focused on the practice management data. So it's bringing a whole new data set into the conversation. So
walk me through right now. If I'm going into Dental Intel or I'm going into Jarvis, what am I seeing as a practice owner versus what I'm able to do now with your guys' dashboard?
Yeah, with the other industry analytic tools really focus on the practice management side of things. So, looking at your total production numbers, visit counts, patient demographics, which is something we're also looking at and bringing into our platform. But they're not connecting to the accounting side of things. And so, as Doug mentioned, we really want to paint the complete picture of the practice operations. So at a minimum, we're bringing in both the practice management and the accounting data, but also marrying that with additional data sets for further insights into kind of how the practice is performing as a whole.
Yeah, give me some like KPIs or examples of numbers I can track now with your dashboard that I couldn't before.
Well, so when you open up our dashboard, one of the first things you can see in the dropdown is you can pull up an income statement and balance sheet, for example. And then you can drill down into that and you can do benchmarking based on those revenue expenses. You can benchmark your practices against each other. You can benchmark against external KPIs. You can benchmark against industry standards. So to have that power of the revenue expenses along with the benchmarking, we think is a real game changer.
Got it. Okay, so now am I able to see how profitable I am with the dashboard as well?
Yeah, one of the very first dashboards shows if you want to get as simple as monthly revenue and expenses, and how your cash flow is doing, you can translate that into monthly profitability. You can drill down into a calendar view of your production by day, right down to the doctor, the dentist, or the hygienist to see what their production is against budgets. So all kinds of different ways to slice and dice that data.
Which seems so basic, right? Like this seems like duh, like you should be tracking this stuff, right? But it's not. So why isn't this in the dental industry yet? What's going on? What am I missing?
Glenn, do you want to give just a brief history of, we actually started on the medical side, believe it or not, and morphed into dental, and that's Glenn's expertise.
Yeah, so, we worked with medical practices. My background was working with large health systems, hospitals, coming up through accounting, budgeting, benchmarking. And, for an individual practice, group of practices, the focus really is on the day-to-day operations, trying to fill the schedules, dealing with staffing issues, things like that. And so kind of the bigger picture financial piece of it kind of gets lost. And so if a practice is working with a CPA or bookkeeper, they may be meeting monthly. Hopefully they have further insights into that. But, it's not something that, a lot of times they're super comfortable with, or something that's really been ingrained into, kind of the workflow of the office or center. And so, something that I learned on the hospital side is, having a per unit of service based measurement, so, you've got your total marketing expense, you've got your total supply expense. You can kind of track that with the ebbs and flows of the practice, but then, how do you really, impart change on that is by looking at different units of service and then comparing your performance to your peers, as Doug mentioned, with the benchmarking.
So Gary, I was going to mention, you hit the nail on the head. Think about General Motors, or think about Walmart or somebody, or think about any business. They have information about their cost structure, the information about their competitors. It's expected, right? But for some reason in dentistry, it's like this aha moment when all of a sudden we're providing this level of detail to a financial executive. It's really kind of mind-blowing when you think about it like that. It should already be there.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you guys an example of what we deal with on the marketing side, and this is a little bit higher in the funnel, and then we'll bring this into how this impacts you guys as well and what you guys are doing on this front. So one thing that we noticed, we started working with a lot of implant practices, and those implant practices wanted all these leads, right? These big leads. But what we realized, it was taking a minimum of 2 hours a day to follow up with those leads, just at each office, right? So every time you're spending, a certain amount of marketing money, because these were larger implant cases. So what we realized right away was number one, they don't have the manpower to do that. Number two, they're not trained to do that. Number three, they don't have a system to do that. Right now in dental, there's no CRM. And the reason there's no CRM is because you're not allowed to use the word sales. Dentists don't like the word sales, which I understand why they don't like that, right? I'm totally good with that. But the problem is then developers don't come in and create CRMs that are focused on sales because you don't have a sales department. So what we're working on is we're actually launching it later this year. We already use it internally. Is we have a CRM that helps you take that new patient off the phone and off the email, because that's the CRM right now for most dental offices, and moves it into a system where you can actually see where that patient's at pre-PMS. Because if you don't make it into a PMS in dental, you don't exist. There's nothing. You don't connect with anybody. You never happened, right? And so it's totally invisible, and it makes marketing really, really hard when you approach it that way. So that's how we try to tackle that problem. How are you guys solving some of that patient flow problem, marketing coming in? How do you guys look at it and solve it?
Well, first of all, I was going to say, you raised an interesting point on the data flow. We were talking to a dental financial consultant, and they have a number of dentists that they consult with across the country. And we said, well, how do you get the financial information to put into your analysis? And they said, well, we call the dentist every week, and we badger them into sending us an Excel spreadsheet with some data on it that's been entered into Excel. Then we take it and we put it into another system so we can populate the reports and such. I mean, think about first of all, think about the effort involved.
Yeah.
And then think about the opportunity for error. I mean, data entry, right?
And you're not going to scale that bad boy either.
It's a stone age. And so back to your initial point about the ability to get data accurately, because once we're just extracting data from the accounting system, and we also have anomaly detection tools. So if there's a data entry error and an amount or of account balance is outside of a bell curve, you're going to get a warning. It's going to be that doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. So it protects you both from data entry errors and potentially from fraud, which from putting my CPA hat on can be endemic, especially in smaller dental organizations.
Well, it's everywhere, because dental offices this problem's so bad that dental offices don't even know where the revenue is coming from. So you're trying to build in business, you're trying to build predictable revenue, right? That's what you want.
Yep.
And so in dental, you have cash basis, and then you have accrual accounting, accrual accounting super hard to do in dental because you have people that are you have insurance companies that are sending in checks from 6 months ago. You have people who are on payment plans, paying cash when they show up to the office. You have other people paying in full and paying in their credit card. Literally, all you have to do to scam that system is take a check and pull it out and don't cash it and then go turn it in to your own ATM. And now you just stole that money and no one would ever be able to see that. There's no way to process. It's really hard to process through that and figure that out. And that's why I believe that there's so many people scamming inside of dental. It happens all the time at the office level. I love that you guys are solving that. So I want to come back to that. How are you guys dealing with the marketing side of things? How do you, with new patients coming in, how are you sorting through the marketing patients?
So I don't know, Glenn, if you want to touch on some of the marketing initiatives we're working with and pulling some of those APIs, but I'll defer to you on that.
Sure. Yeah. So we're working with some of our practices to kind of tie together their marketing data with the PM data. So, you're talking about everything, pre-booking, making sure that appointment gets scheduled so that there is a record of it. What we're doing is combining that with, okay, did this patient actually come in once that was scheduled? And then kind of creating a patient profile to calculate a lifetime patient value. And then kind of using that to then target and look at your patient populations and see where the trends are coming from, looking at your patient demographics. And so, there's two things. There's the data entry integrity, so is your front office staff kind of trained on entering where this referral source is coming from? Do they understand the downstream impacts of that? Because we want to be able to tie that all together. But then within your current patient population, are you seeing growth in certain services within certain zips or geographies, neighborhoods? Can you use that to then supplement your advertising efforts?
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, I will tell you this. So this is all we do on our side is segment data for marketing only. And so what we have realized is the offices do not earmark it correctly, and it's almost impossible to get the right answer. One thing that has helped with that is we do train the offices, and rather than asking, where did you find us, which is always the website, which means that's the last place everybody looks is the website, right? Because they're calling. We actually have trained them to say, who can we thank for referring you to our office? So then that automatically defaults you to go, oh, it was my doctor or my family. And if it wasn't, then they go, oh, no, I just Google searched you online. That helps a little bit. But I think we should definitely have a talk after this because I think there might be an opportunity for us to marry this together and get a lot of really useful information for our customers, which I absolutely love. Now, Oh, go ahead, Doug.
I was going to say on that point, so kind of in my mind, the holy grail of all this is to have all the data from all the disparate systems flowing into one dashboard. Mm-hmm. And to that end, as long as there's an API, so we can pull in payroll data, for example, as long as there's an API and the company's playing nice, so to speak, because some companies are a little more. They hold that information a little bit tighter, even though it's the client's information. But as long as there's APIs, you can theoretically draw that information into DataDx and create one-stop shopping, which is really the holy grail.
Yeah, that's awesome. And let's talk about that. So yes, some people don't play nice in dental. And actually, you said it's not the PMSs data. I actually don't even believe it's the customer's data. I believe it's the patient's data. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's part of the 21st Century Cures Act and is making that information available for you as an individual. You should be able to go to any doctor, dentist, healthcare provider that you see and get access to your information. I think that, there was an article like 20, 30 years ago about a guy that was tracking his blood pressure, everything in an Excel file. And, with wearables and everything, you should be able to, be the holder of your own information. And I do think we are making progress towards that. I mean, that was kind of the first phase of the 21st Century Cures Act. And now with the information blocking clause really going into effect October 6th, that information should become more readily available. But, it's the doctors that are producing that data as well, too. So they should have access to it as well.
No, I
to better
agree that,
run their
yeah, the
business.
PMS
And
needs access. You guys need
Well,
access. We need access. But people act like they own it when it really belongs to the patient, really, at the end of the day.
to your point, Gary, there's some, I'm not going to name names.
Well, why
There's some
not?
companies
Why,
where,
why not? That's why it was actually my next question. I'll start. So the biggest pain in the
okay,
butt for us to integrate with is Dentrix Ascend, and they make it impossible to get into, and it's really, really hard, and we need that information. And they play really crazy games, and I've had multiple people tell me, "Hey, Gary, these guys want us to sign agreements with them, and I'm worried that they're going to do something with the information that we're signing up with them, all those kind of things." So that's our biggest obstacle right now, is that one. What about you guys? Are you guys having similar problems, or where are you guys at?
I'll defer to Glenn.
yeah, I mean that's definitely the case. Some systems are a little bit more open and transparent about things. Some are totally behind. I mean, oral surgery systems.
Oral surgery and ortho are really
Yeah.
hard to get information.
Why
The
is
big
that? Is it
boys are
because they don't want to, or is it because they can't? Like, there's a difference there. So, like, we can integrate with some of the PMSs from ortho, like Dolphin and a couple of the others, but there's still some like little ones, and I'm not even going to call their names out because they're really small, but I just don't think they're built for that. It's not like they're trying to stop people from getting the data. They just haven't built the platform to be able to integrate.
Do they have the APIs in some cases, Glenn, or do they not even have those?
No, I think it's a little bit of both. Some systems truly don't have the capabilities or aren't making the internal investment to make it a priority, make the information available. Even just getting flat files or, a nightly database historical extract can be really tough for some of these, IT vendors to provide on their systems. But that really has to change. And I mean, you made a comment on one of your posts, like dental's just 10 years behind medical or something like that, right? And but I don't really think that's fair either. I mean, medical is not in a much better place either when it
Agreed,
comes
yeah.
to data.
Yep.
And it can be, a really lengthy and difficult process to get data out of the systems. And, we're really trying to partner with them because these are our mutual clients, right? Like if we can help them run their business more efficiently, they're going to be able to stay on your PM system or EHR as a client. It's mutually beneficial. And, the way that things are going in the industry with around data and everything, other industries are light years ahead of healthcare,
Yeah.
healthcare as a blanket
Which
term.
is scary, right? Because now the thing that's scary is like, so you got a car. I have a car that drives itself now, and that sends over the air updates to my car. That now one day I couldn't drive it in the same car, I couldn't self drive it, and now the next day I can self drive it, and I can press a button and say go to the store, and it drives all the way to the store for me. So they were able to have this kind of technology, which is amazing. But that's my car. When you're dealing with my body, I want the best of the best, right? And there's tons of money in this industry, and there's tons of money in medical. There's even like dental's very small compared to medical and the amount of money that's there. Mm-hmm. And so what's stopping it? What is the holdup? Is it the companies that are holding the data that are being the roadblocks because they don't want it, they're grandfathered in and they don't want to lose the money that they have now? Or is there something else there that I just don't understand?
Yeah. And that's the scary part, right? Like when it comes to your health, when you're talking to your dentist, doctor, like you expect them to know everything about you, right? And, even in a closed system like Kaiser, where, they're the insurance side and they're the care providers, they don't always have all the information on you. And that's, within a closed ecosystem.
Yeah.
Why
is that though? Why though?
I was just saying, I'm going to give an example. Think about, you ever had this frustration where you go to a new doctor and you have to start over from ground zero and I make up some of my history because I can't remember my medical history and there's no way for them to access. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's insane, really.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So back to your question, Glenn, about why you think that is.
Yeah, I mean, it's just systemic, right? Like, we had the high tech, we were trying to transition the country to electronic health records from paper records. because there were natural disasters and different things, and people's records were getting wiped out. There's no documentation remaining of any kind of medical procedure or visit that you've had. So, the push was, okay, let's get everybody onto these electronic health records, PM systems. There was a bit of a gold rush in that era, around 2009, where, the government was providing funding for practices to switch over. And so I think that, both medical and dental kind of jumped on that bandwagon, tried to get something quickly to market that would satisfy things. Most systems were obviously built for billing and not necessarily for patient care. So then you have all these hundreds, if not thousands, really, of different, electronic systems that are trying to solve for all these things. None of them can really do everything great, right?
Yep.
And so it's like, when we come in at, downstream trying to access the data, it's like, well, what do you recommend we use? And it's like, well, there isn't really a killer app yet because everyone has a little bit of a specialty. So, when we come in, we don't try to change the workflow of a practice, but we want to be able to get access to their data still. And so, it's tough because then these companies kind of built up a user base, and they have some market dominance, and so then the innovation cycle slows down. And now we have the doctors kind of clamoring for this information because they need to be more efficient. They need to control their costs. Healthcare in this country is spending's out of control. And inflation, everything is just adding to it.
Smashing them,
so where can doctors get smart about things, without being data driven? It's still a lot of gut feeling, a lot of manual processes.
Hey, Tanner, Glenn said something. Can I mention our good friend, Tanner Applegate?
Yep.
He had a post recently about the fact that there isn't a killer app. There isn't a killer app yet. You can pretend there is, but there isn't. And that's sad in one sense, and that's really, I guess, what we're trying to do here at DataDx is do our part to bring as many of those systems together into a single dashboard. It's a rung up the ladder, I guess, of that ultimate killer app, if that makes sense.
Yep. And there's a process. So we didn't all of a sudden go from a horse and buggy to helicopters. Right. There was a process. Right. There was horse and buggy, and then there was an upgrade, and we progressively get better. And that's the goal. The problem is when your infrastructure is not built in a way to be able to handle what you're putting on top of it. So it's like, we went from horse and buggy to cars, but if there was no roads for the cars, you can only build such a good car until the roads actually get built. And a lot of times you need help from the outside coming in to standardize things. And I feel like, sometimes we're like running in the mud a little bit. And I can only imagine that, that when people like you come in and start changing how we perceive the information, it helps us speed things along. And I think that's great. So tell me who's been, when you guys do integrate with an office, who's like the best at having data ready for you? Is there anybody who's just been amazing that you've been able to plug into and go, man, this had everything that we need, even outside of the PMSs, even on the bookkeeping side or anything, just a list of people who just do an amazing job?
I'd say like on the accounting side, the financial information, if a practice is on QuickBooks, we can integrate with QuickBooks Desktop, Enterprise, QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Online is the best one to integrate of those three, because, financial services have had a little bit more time to build out their systems, right? And so it's the same level of regulation that you have in healthcare. So these things are possible. Their API is very robust. We can automate the report generation process, so we can compare nightly, information we're pulling from the database, compare that to the front end reports, look for any differences, new accounts that have been added. On the PM side, it's something that's very hard to scale at this point because every practice, even if they're using the same PM system, are going to be utilizing it a little bit different. So even when it comes to things like treatment acceptance rates, you can't just plug and play one formula into that calculation. each practice is kind of going about their workflow, utilizing fields in a little different way. Some
Even
systems
inside the same,
allow.
I've seen even inside the same office, people are using the PMS differently, and that's tricky, right?
Well, I'm going to tell you a real quick story, Gary. We were talking to somebody, and they said, "Well, how long does it take for you guys to get a practice up and uploaded and running?" And we said, "Well, depending on the cooperation, everything else, it might take a week or so." And they said a week. They mentioned one of our competitors. They said they can get us up and running in an hour. And we're like, "Oh no, we can connect it the fire hose in a half an hour and get the information flowing, but we guarantee you
Yeah.
some of the information won't be correctly categorized. It won't be right.
Yep.
So unless you scrub the data up front, it's the whole garbage in, garbage out scenario.
Yep.
You've got to
That's a
take the
really
time
good
up
way to
front.
explain it.
When we create a standardized chart of accounts, they can still use their chart of accounts, but we put it into a standard DataDx chart of accounts, so then you can apples to apples benchmark to your other practices and to your external peers.
Okay, so I got a question for you guys. So what is when you get everything integrated, so you get plugged into their PMSs, you get everything scrubbed the right way, so you're actually reading the right information and it's as accurate as you can get it, and then you plug in the financials to it. What are the benchmarks that you go, okay, this one keeps moving the needle? Like as soon as people know this number, then they can actually make substantial change to their practice. What are those numbers that people are getting that they probably didn't have before?
Yeah, I mean, that really goes into the power of benchmarking. And because we spend so much time on that upfront data integrity, data quality piece, and it's not just the chart of accounts, it's even things like the payer mappings. Practice is just going to try and get through their day as quick as possible. And so, they may not be noticing that, they have 10 Delta dental plans that are all the same payer plan, like group plan, but they're spelled differently. One has of, one has capitalized. So it is really important.
So how would that move the needle though? Help me, because I've never worked in an office before. So I got an office. I got 10 different Delta dental plans. They're all the same, but they're all spelled differently. So they're all segmented separately. How will that then move when you fix that? Spell them all correctly. Now they're of one family. How does that help me move the needle on that particular metric?
Yeah, so for that one, I mean, that really helps you understand kind of the revenue cycle of the practice. When you're running the reports, you may be missing some things. Your aging may be looking off. We can run it by provider. So is it, a provider issue? Is it something on the payer side that claims are taking longer?
So it could have been a typo, something as small as a typo in how you're spelling Delta Dental, not even a typo, just like I put a space in it and Doug doesn't or whatever, right?
Yep.
And so then now these are all segmented separately. So then when I'm going in to look at my user mix, I'm getting bad information out because no, Delta Dental is not as big as I thought it would be. It seems like we see a lot more from Delta Dental, but it's because it's split 30 different ways. And then you segment it together. Now I have an actual real outcome of what actually happened with that insurance. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
And here's another example, Gary. When you start to tie production and collections to a specific dentist or hygienist, you can really see their, for example, their productivity per patient, their productivity per treatment plan, those types of things that really jump out. Both at the provider, people are competitive, and then they're able to see how they compare to their peers, but also as the CFO of this organization, or as let's say a regional operational manager, you're able to see, wait a minute, why is this doctor performing in this manner in this one, or the hygienist, for example? And to have that level of detail, it's not for punitive measures.
No.
It's to be able to say, what is someone doing differently that allows them to be more profitable than you are? And let's take a look at how we can get you to that space.
Yeah, because dentist,
exactly.
It's just like, well, it's not profit. It's like more efficient. Why can this person see 20 people in the day and you can only see 4 in the same amount of time? And it usually comes down to now that's a training opportunity. And the way I look at it is you can't be the leader that you need to be without this data. You can't show up and say, hey, this dentist is really struggling or this hygienist is really struggling and we need to bring in clinical training. But you can't do that without this kind of data. I think that's amazing. What are some topics that I didn't ask you about that you think are really important in what you guys are doing?
Well, I think the one area that I touched on it is how to bring all the information from the different systems together into one platform. It's really where we need to go, both as an industry within dentistry and in healthcare in general, because It's a kind of a shame we touched on this. It's okay. You think about the car example. We know everything about a car and it can drive itself. But as far as my healthcare data, which is the most important thing in the world to me, as yours is to you and your families, that is where we have this huge gaping hole in terms of how we can collect the data and leverage it to provide better healthcare. It's just kind of mind blowing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, having that complete view of the practice. Some practices utilize the timekeeping function within their PM system, so we are able to get pretty useful, hours worked per measurements out of that. But others are utilizing payroll systems, so we can bring in that data as well, look at overtime usage, things like that. But it really is a journey. And, we really love working with practices that understand that and really want to set a good foundation for success. I mean, it's like Doug mentioned, the whole garbage in, garbage out thing. Having the teams understand the downstream impacts of the data entry is really important. And, some of our visuals, are really simple and easy to identify. Like, hey, we've got a bunch of patients showing up here over in Europe. Is that the case? Like, maybe you may be getting a lot of tourists or people visiting. Or, is there an issue with, only 4 digits getting entered for the zip instead of 5?
Yeah. That's awesome.
So but I'm sure you've never seen marketing data entry errors. No, I'm sure you've never seen that.
That never goes incorrectly. That's the biggest crapshoot, right? So what we do is we actually look at what did this person search, right? So if someone searches ABC Dental, then they're not a marketing lead, right? Because they learned about that name from somewhere else. And then we tie it into what they said on the phone. So we get the front desk to actually ask the question, who can we thank for referring you? Then we tie it back to the PMS. So if someone searches the word dentist and then on the phone they said, I found you online, and then it's entered into the PMS, it was a marketing lead. Now we have confirmation that this is an actual marketing lead. And we're the same way. We want clean data. If we don't have clean data, we can't scale their marketing because we're mixing in patient referrals with marketing new patients. And once you do that, it's not scalable because you can't scale patient referrals. You can only scale the marketing side. So we're all about trying to create that predictable patient flow. So I totally get the pain that you guys are dealing with. And I appreciate you guys coming on and actually letting me ask you tough questions. And I think it's awesome what you guys are building. It's so needed. And I know you guys are going to knock it out of the park. I really actually understand now the difference between what you're offering and what a lot of other people are offering as well. If someone wanted to reach out to you and learn more about what you guys are doing, how would they get in touch with you?
They can go through our website to reach out to us, DataDx.com. They can reach out to me via email, dfettig, Fettig at DataDx.com. Glenn, you want to throw them your email address?
Sure, yeah, it's glawrence at DataDx.com.
That's awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming on. You guys did a great job. If you guys need a dashboard, which probably everybody that I'm talking to right now, hearing my voice, if you made it this far, there's no way. You're either a psychopath or you're in the dental industry. Those are the only 2 options if you listened all the way to here. So make sure you reach out to these guys. Get the information. They got something very, very unique. And this is really cool. I'm excited to watch you guys grow. I know you guys are going to really grow and expand and help a lot of people.
Thanks for the opportunity, Gary. Appreciate working with you down the road, too.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.